"Daddy, she's hungry." The words were barely a whisper. 6 years old, gap-toothed, clutching the hem of her father's jacket, Luna Carter had no way of knowing what those 4 words would set in motion. She only knew what she saw: a woman sitting perfectly still on a park bench, dressed in clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent, staring at nothing. Everyone else in Riverside Park walked past her without a second glance. The joggers jogged, the dog walkers scrolled their phones. The world moved around that woman the way a river bends around a stone automatically, indifferently. But Luna stopped. She tugged her father's sleeve with both hands, the way she always did when something mattered. Michael Carter looked down at his daughter, then followed her gaze across the path to the woman on the bench. He saw expensive shoes, a tailored blazer, a posture so rigid it looked like it might shatter. He started to say something reassuring, started to tell her the woman was probably just tired, just thinking, just fine. Then Luna held up the small cardboard box she'd been cradling all morning, the birthday cake he'd saved 3 weeks to buy, and said it again. "Daddy, she's hungry. Can I share?" Nobody would write about what happened next in any business journal. No boardroom would discuss it. But 3 lives would bend around that moment, like light bends through glass, changed in direction, changed in color, arriving somewhere none of them had planned. The park. The cake. The little girl who noticed what everyone else had chosen not to see. It started there. Michael Carter was 34 years old and had been making peace with small things for most of his adult life. He drove a 2009 pickup truck with a cracked dashboard and a heater that worked on its better days. He wore steel-toed boots 5 days a week, sometimes 6 to his job as a maintenance technician at the Greystone office complex downtown, where he fixed things no one noticed until they broke. Leaking pipes, failing HVAC units, elevator doors that refused to stay closed. He was good at his work in the quiet, unglamorous way that good tradespeople always are, not celebrated, simply relied upon. In the evenings, he drove to a second job, 3 nights a week, doing handyman work for a property management company in the East Side neighborhoods. It paid $40 an hour in cash and kept the lights on. He had been doing this since Luna was 2, since the year he lost Claire. The loss wasn't something Michael spoke about easily. Claire had died of a brain aneurysm sudden, without warning, on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning. She had been 29 years old. She had been laughing at something on the radio when it happened. That detail, for reasons Michael could never fully explain, was the one that stayed with him longest. The laugh, the radio, the way Tuesday had simply continued being Tuesday for everyone else in the world. He had learned, in the years since, to build a life that was small but solid. He cooked real meals. He showed up to every school event. He read to Luna at bedtime even when his hands ached from a full day of work. He had nothing to offer her that was grand or impressive, so he gave her everything that was steady consistency, presence, the specific warmth of a father who understood that being there was a form of love that money could not outrank. Luna understood this, in the wordless way children sometimes understand the things that matter most. She was not a sad child. She was a perceptive one, the kind of 6-year-old who noticed when a classmate was left out at recess, who brought an extra cracker to share without being asked, who stopped in grocery store aisles to talk to elderly strangers because, as she had once explained to her father with complete seriousness, they look like they want someone to talk to. Today was her birthday. She had asked for one thing: to go to the park and eat cake with her daddy. Michael had driven to the bakery on 5th Street that morning, the one that sold individual celebration cakes, small rounds with white frosting and one decorative flower in the center. It cost $11. He had put a single candle on it himself, in the parking lot, using a lighter he kept in the truck's cup holder. Luna had declared it the most beautiful cake she had ever seen. She had meant it. They spread a blanket near the fountain and sat together in the September morning light, not talking much, just existing in the comfortable quiet of people who know each other well. The park was beginning to fill dog walkers, joggers, a pair of elderly men playing chess at the concrete table near the path. Michael poured apple juice into a thermos cup. Luna hummed something tuneless and happy. Neither of them had any reason to look toward the east entrance of the park. Neither of them had any reason to notice the black car that pulled up to the curb, or the woman who stepped out of it with the careful, contained movements of someone accustomed to being watched. Not until Luna looked up. Scarlett Bennett was 28 years old and had not taken an unscheduled break in 4 years. She was the founder and CEO of Bennett Logistics Solutions, a mid-sized supply chain optimization company she had started from a single rented desk and a personal credit card at the age of 22. By 25, she had 30 employees. By 27, she had 400. The company's most recent valuation had appeared in a trade publication under the headline, "The Quiet Disruptor." Scarlett had read the article once, found no factual errors, and moved on. She was not, by most conventional measures, a person who had time to fall apart. That morning had been the worst of her professional life. The board meeting had begun at 7:30. It was supposed to be a quarterly review routine, controlled, the kind of session she had run dozens of times, and always left feeling like the person still holding the reins. But this time, when she had walked into the conference room on the 21st floor, she had understood within 60 seconds that something had shifted. The arrangement of chairs. The way her CFO, Daniel Marsh, would not meet her eyes. Daniel had been with her since the beginning. Since the rented desk and the credit card, she had trusted him the way you trust the ground under your feet automatically, without thinking, because the alternative was too disorienting to consider. The board had informed her, with the careful language of people who had practiced their sentences, that Daniel had spent the previous 3 months cultivating a relationship with a private equity group that now held a significant enough stake in the company to initiate a governance review. The goal, as it was diplomatically framed, was to explore leadership structures that could optimize the company's next growth phase, which meant her. She had sat very still during the presentation. She had asked 3 questions, all procedural. She had said that she would review the documentation and respond within the week. She had stood, buttoned her blazer, and walked out. She had taken the elevator down instead of the stairs, which was unusual. She had walked through the lobby without stopping at the front desk to pick up the package that had been waiting for her since Monday. She had told her assistant, Priya, that she needed an hour. She had gotten into the car and told the driver to just drive, and when he'd asked where, she'd said the park, because it was the first word that had come to her. Now she sat on a bench in Riverside Park and felt, for the first time in a very long time, genuinely uncertain what to do next. She was not hungry. She had no appetite. She was not cold, though the September air had a thin edge to it. She was not thinking clearly enough to plan anything. She was just sitting, which was, for Scarlett Bennett, approximately the same as drowning. She did not notice the man and the little girl on the blanket near the fountain. She did not notice most things in those minutes. She was somewhere else, in the particular interior distance of a person whose certainties have just been removed. Luna noticed her first. The girl had been watching a pigeon work its way along the edge of the fountain when her gaze drifted, the way a child's gaze does, following no particular logic. It landed on the woman at the bench. Luna studied her with the frank, unhurried attention that adults rarely manage and children cannot help. The woman had not moved in a long time. She was sitting very straight, the way Luna's teacher sat when she was trying not to show she was upset. Her hands were in her lap. There was no food near her, no drink, nothing. And her eyes, Luna couldn't see them clearly from this distance, but something about the way the woman held her face made the girl's chest feel tight in a way she recognized. It was the feeling she got when someone was trying to be invisible. She picked up the cake box and climbed to her feet. Luna Michael started. "She hasn't eaten anything, Daddy, and she looks sad." Luna was already walking, the small cardboard box held in both hands with the ceremony of someone carrying something fragile. "I'll just share a little bit." Michael was on his feet immediately, following 2 steps behind, his hand half raised in the instinctive parental gesture of not quite stopping something but not fully letting it happen either. Scarlett heard small footsteps on the path and looked up. A girl maybe 5 or 6, dark braids, a yellow dress with a smudge of grass on the hem was walking toward her with the determined focus of someone who had made a decision and intended to see it through. Behind her, a man in work clothes was keeping pace with the expression of a person who wasn't sure this was a good idea but had already lost the argument. The girl stopped directly in front of Scarlett's bench. "Hi," Luna said. "I'm Luna. It's my birthday today." She held out the box. "We have cake. Do you want some? You look like you need it." Scarlett stared at the box, then at the child, then at the man behind her who looked genuinely mortified, the way parents do when a child has cut directly to something true. "That's very kind of you," Scarlett said. The words came out slowly, as if she was remembering how to produce them. "But it's your birthday cake. You should keep it. It's okay." Luna was already opening the box with practiced efficiency. "Daddy says the best thing about having something is that you can share it. You can have the piece with the flower on it. That's the best piece." Michael reached them, slightly breathless. "I'm so sorry," he said. He glanced at his daughter, who was cutting a decisive slice with the plastic fork from their bag, and appeared to give up on the sentence. Scarlett looked at the slice of cake being offered to her on a square of wax paper. It had a small pink frosting flower on it. The candle was still in the center of what remained. "It's really okay," she said, but her voice had changed, dropped slightly, the careful professional tone replaced by something quieter and less defended. "It's okay," Luna confirmed. "Today is my birthday. I can share." Scarlett took the cake. Her hand was steady. Only someone watching very closely would have noticed the faint tremor that passed through it as her fingers closed around the wax paper. A tremor not of weakness but of something suddenly remembered. She looked at the small pink flower in the frosting and felt a pressure behind her eyes that she recognized with the distant alarm of a person who has not cried in a professional setting since the age of 22 and has no intention of starting now. She took a breath. She looked away from the cake for a moment, at the fountain, at the pigeons, at the October-leaning sky. What came back to her was not a thought. It was a texture. The specific feeling of being 8 years old in a house that was large and quiet and full of things that cost money, on a birthday that had been noted in the family calendar but not, in any way that mattered, celebrated. Her parents had been busy. They were always busy, and the housekeeper had left a store-bought cupcake on the kitchen counter with a post-it note that said, "Happy birthday." Scarlett in handwriting that was not her mother's. She had eaten it alone at the kitchen island, watching the school bus go past through the window, past the age of riding it, but not past the age of noticing things like that. She had not thought about that cupcake in 20 years. Luna had sat down on the bench beside her, matter-of-factly, as if this were the natural continuation of a conversation they'd been having for some time. She was eating her own piece of cake with complete focus. Scarlett took a bite. It was sweet, and a little too soft, and tasted like $11 frosting from a neighborhood bakery. It was the best thing she had eaten all year. "Why would you give this away?" she asked. The question came out without planning, directed at Luna, but also, in some interior sense, at no one in particular. Luna considered this with the gravity she gave to most questions. "Because you look like you need it more than me," she said, "and I already have Daddy, so I have a lot." Michael, who had been standing slightly behind them with the uncertain posture of a man unsure whether to intervene, felt something move in his chest at that. He didn't say anything. He sat down carefully on the opposite end of the bench. The three of them were quiet for a moment. The fountain ran. A dog barked somewhere across the park. Somewhere in the city behind them, 21 floors up, a conference room full of people was deciding what to do about Scarlett Bennett. She didn't think about that. She thought about the frosting flower, and the 8-year-old she used to be, and the strange and specific relief of being seen by someone who had no idea who she was. It was Priya who arrived, first appearing at the park entrance at a near jog, phone in hand, professional anxiety written across every feature of her face. She spotted Scarlett on the bench and exhaled visibly from 30 feet away. "Miss Bennett." She slowed as she approached, her voice calibrated to the tone she used when she was professionally worried, but did not want to be seen as such. "You didn't answer your phone." We were concerned." "I'm fine, Priya." Scarlett's voice was back to its usual register, though something in it was different, a degree less armored. "I needed air." Priya's gaze moved to Michael, then to Luna, then back to Scarlett, a rapid professional assessment that Michael recognized the way working people always recognize it. The slight recalibration of posture. The decision about whether what was happening was a problem. "Of course," Priya said. "Whenever you're ready." Michael had already begun to piece things together before Priya arrived. The car, the tailored clothes, the particular way the woman carried authority even when she was sitting still. But hearing Priya say Miss Bennett confirmed something he hadn't wanted to confirm. He had read the name Scarlett Bennett in a business column 6 months ago, in the break room at Greystone, when someone had left a magazine on the table. He remembered the photograph severe, composed, shot from an angle that made her look taller than she probably was. The article had called her the most formidable founder in the logistics sector. He remembered thinking it seemed like an exhausting way to be described. He stood up now, and the shift in his posture was involuntary, the instinctive recalibration that happens when a person suddenly understands the gap between themselves and whoever they've been casually sharing a bench with. He picked up the cake box, folded the blanket, began the small business of gathering their things. "Luna," he said, "we should probably—" "Don't go yet." Scarlett said it quietly, but with enough precision that Michael stopped mid-motion. She looked at him directly, without the performance of it. "I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself properly. I'm Scarlett." "Michael, this is Luna." He paused. "We know who you are." Something shifted slightly in her expression, not quite discomfort, but an awareness of it. "Does that change anything?" Michael considered the question longer than was strictly polite. "I'm not sure yet," he said. Luna, who had been watching this exchange with the evaluative attention she gave to most things involving adults, appeared satisfied with this answer. She reached over and patted Scarlett's hand once, with the decisive comfort of a child who has identified a situation that needs addressing and has addressed it. "It was nice to meet you," she said. "I hope your day gets better." The second person to arrive at the park was not Priya. Marcus Webb was the company's head of communications, and he had been, until approximately 4 hours ago, someone Scarlett had trusted to manage the public-facing dimension of whatever crises the business threw at them. He was efficient, well-dressed, and possessed the practiced smoothness of a person who had spent 15 years learning to turn difficult situations into manageable narratives. He appeared at the park entrance 12 minutes after Priya, and he did not jog. He walked with the measured confidence of someone who felt he was arriving to handle something, not to be directed. He took in the scene: Scarlett on the bench, the man in work clothes, the child, and his face performed a sequence of micro-expressions that resolved into something Scarlett immediately recognized as a judgment being made. "Miss Bennett." He stepped closer, positioning himself in a way that was subtly but unmistakably designed to create separation. "We should get back. The board is expecting a response by end of day, and there are—" He glanced at Michael with an expression that was not quite a sneer but was several degrees below neutral. "There are things we should discuss privately." Michael kept his expression level. He recognized the particular quality of that glance, had encountered it before, in various forms, in various places where his clothes or his occupation or the truck parked outside made certain people decide something about him before he had spoken. He started to stand. "We were just leaving anyway." "Of course you were." Marcus said it quietly, just loud enough, with just enough weight behind it. He wasn't speaking to Michael, technically. He was speaking to no one in particular. But the words had a direction to them. People like him always want something. It's just a question of what. The park, for a moment, seemed to go very still. Luna looked up from her cake. She looked at Marcus. She looked at her father. She didn't fully understand the words, but she understood the tone with the unerring accuracy of a child who has learned to read rooms, and what she read in this one made her set down her fork. Michael's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice even. "Luna, get your jacket." "No." The word came from Scarlett. She had stood up. It was not a dramatic gesture. There was no raised voice, no performance of authority. She simply stood, and the quality of her stillness changed from grief-stricken to something else entirely. "Marcus," her voice was the temperature of January. "What you just said was, I know what you were doing." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. In 4 years of running a company, Scarlett had learned that the most devastating thing she could do was be precise. "This man sat here because his daughter wanted to share her birthday cake with me. He said nothing to me that wasn't generous and decent, and what you implied in front of his child was beneath this company and beneath you." She paused. "You can go back to the office. I'll be there when I'm there." Marcus looked as though he had bitten into something and found it unexpectedly bitter. He adjusted his cuffs. He left. In the silence after, Luna reached up and took her father's hand. Michael looked at Scarlett. He was not sure, exactly, what to say. Most of the frameworks he had for navigating these situations, the quiet dignity of withdrawal, the practiced invisibility that working-class people learn as a kind of armor, did not quite apply to this moment. "Thank you," he said at last. It was insufficient, and he knew it. "He was wrong," Scarlett said simply. "I don't let wrong things stand." She looked at Luna. The girl was watching her with those grave, dark eyes that seemed to process the world several layers deeper than most adults managed. "You didn't have to do that," Michael said. Neither did she. Scarlett nodded toward Luna. "Share her cake. She didn't have to do that either." The logic of it appeared to settle something between them, not resolution, exactly, but a kind of alignment. The knowledge that two people are operating from the same set of values, even if everything else about their lives is different. "We're going to get lunch," Scarlett heard herself say. If Luna would want to." She looked at Michael. "Not a business thing, not anything complicated, just lunch." If she wants cake, there's a bakery 2 blocks from here that's actually good. Michael looked down at his daughter. Luna looked up at Scarlett, then at her father, with the expression she used when something seemed obvious to her, and she was wondering why it wasn't obvious to everyone else. "Daddy," she said, "she still looks lonely." The restaurant Scarlett chose was not the kind that came with tablecloths and a wine list. It was a diner on Clement Street, red vinyl booths, laminated menus, coffee that arrived in heavy ceramic mugs without being requested. She had been here once before, years ago, after a late meeting had left her too tired to choose anywhere better. She remembered it as the kind of place where no one looked at you twice. That suited her. This afternoon, they sat in the back booth, Luna between them on the inside, already absorbed in the laminated menu, with the concentration of a scholar studying primary sources. Michael sat across from Scarlett with the careful posture of someone who was choosing, consciously, to be at ease. "She always like this?" Scarlett asked, nodding toward Luna. "Since she could talk," Michael said. "She sees people, really sees them. I don't know where she gets it." "You do," Luna said, without looking up from the menu. Scarlett smiled. It was a real smile, not the calibrated, camera-ready version she had spent years perfecting, smaller and less certain, and therefore more genuine. Michael watched it happen and looked away, as if he'd seen something he wasn't sure he should have. The food arrived. Pancakes for Luna, who had decided with great authority, a club sandwich for Michael, soup and bread for Scarlett, who found, to her moderate surprise, that she was actually hungry. "You don't have to tell me anything," Scarlett said. "About yourself. I'm not asking." Michael looked at her steadily. "I know," he said. "I work maintenance at Greystone. Evenings I do handyman work. Single dad. That's most of the story." Most. Claire died 4 years ago. He said it the way he always said it, directly, without softening it into something easier. Aneurysm. It was fast. Scarlett was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry." "I know you are." He picked up his coffee. "What happened to you this morning?" She looked at him. Most people who asked about her life were angling towards something, an investment, a connection, an introduction. The question landed differently when it came from a person who had nothing to gain from her answer. She told him. Not all of it, not the procedural details, the equity percentages, the carefully worded governance language that still made her chest tight when she thought about it. But the shape of it, the betrayal, the specific exhaustion of being surprised by someone you'd stopped thinking of as someone who could surprise you. "Daniel was the first person I hired," she said. "I gave him stock because I wanted him to feel like it was his too. I thought that meant something." "It meant something to you," Michael said. "That's not the same as it meaning the same thing to him." Scarlett looked at the table. "No, I know that now." Luna had finished her pancakes and was drawing shapes on the paper placemat with a crayon from the tin the waiter had brought. She was not, as far as anyone could tell, paying attention to the adult conversation. She was, in fact, listening to every word. "My mom died too," she said, without looking up from her drawing. "But Daddy says she's still here. He says she's in the way he loves me." She paused, colored something in. "I think that's true." Neither adult spoke for a moment. "I think that's true too," Scarlett said. Michael looked at her, and something passed between them. Not a romantic thing, not yet, but the specific recognition of two people who have been quietly lonely for a long time and have just been reminded, by a 6-year-old drawing on a placemat, that loneliness is not the permanent condition they'd assumed it was. The story broke on a Thursday. It was a small item, initially a gossip column entry in a business newsletter that specialized in the kind of news that was technically not news. CEO Scarlett Bennett spotted at Riverside Park and subsequently at a Clement Street diner with an unidentified man and child. The item was 4 sentences. It would have died in the newsletter's usual 48-hour news cycle, unremarked upon, if it hadn't been picked up by a tech culture blog with a larger following, which framed it under a headline that Scarlett read on her phone at 6 in the morning, with the particular weariness of someone who has dealt with this kind of thing before and never quite gotten used to it. The speculation was swift and unimaginative. By noon, there were 2 competing narratives: that she was involved with the man romantically and had kept it hidden as part of a personal brand management strategy, and that the entire thing had been staged a carefully crafted humanizing moment, designed to distract from whatever was happening at the board level, which had by this point begun to leak in vague, unattributed ways into the financial press. Gold Digger appeared in the comment threads, though whether they meant him or her shifted depending on which thread you were reading. Michael found out from a coworker who showed him a screenshot over lunch, silently, with the expression of a man delivering news he wasn't sure how to classify. Michael read the headline twice. He put his sandwich down. He went back to work. That evening, after Luna was in bed, he sat in the kitchen for a long time with the lights off. He had been careful, his whole adult life, about the space he took up in other people's lives. He had learned, through Claire's illness and the years after, that there were people who arrived during hard moments and stayed, and people who arrived during hard moments and made those moments about themselves, and that the difference between the two was not always immediately obvious. He had learned to be the first kind. He had also learned, quietly, that being the first kind sometimes required not complicating other people's lives with your presence. Scarlett Bennett did not need his name attached to her story right now. She did not need whatever the blogs were doing with it. She had enough to manage. He found her number in his phone. She had put it in herself. At the end of the lunch at the diner, for Luna, if she ever needs anything, she can call. He stared at it for a moment, then put the phone face down on the table and went to bed. He didn't call. He didn't text. Scarlett noticed the silence. She noticed it the way you notice the absence of something you hadn't fully admitted, wanting a sound that stopped, a presence withdrawn before you'd acknowledged it as a presence. She had too much work to do to spend time on it. She spent time on it anyway, in the margins of the day, in the seconds between one task and the next. She had a company to stabilize. The board situation required lawyers, strategy, the careful management of a governance crisis that she intended to survive intact. She had meetings scheduled every day for the next 2 weeks. She had a team that was watching her face for information about whether they should be worried. She handled all of it. But in the moments when she was alone in the car, at the end of the day, in the brief window between putting her phone down and falling asleep, she thought about a park bench and a small pink frosting flower, and a man who had answered her questions without once asking anything in return. The industry event was called the Pacific Supply Chain Summit, and Scarlett had been scheduled to speak at it for 6 months. It was not, under normal circumstances, the kind of event where personal stories were told. It was the kind of event where slides were shown and metrics were quoted, and the audience nodded at intervals and wrote things in the margins of their programs. But nothing about this month had been normal. She stood at the podium on the second morning of the conference, a room of approximately 400 people, the press section visible at the back, cameras from 2 trade publications, and she looked at her prepared remarks and felt, with sudden and inconvenient clarity, that she did not want to give them. She set the pages down. The room shifted, that specific attention sharpening that happens when a speaker goes off script. Phones came out. Cameras adjusted. "I had a difficult morning 3 weeks ago," Scarlett began. "I'm not going to describe all of it, but I ended up sitting on a park bench not knowing what to do next, which is an unusual experience for me." A small, honest pause. A little girl walked up to me. She was 6 years old, and it was her birthday, and she was carrying a birthday cake, and she gave me a piece of it because, and I'm quoting her directly, "I looked like I needed it more than she did." The room was quiet in the way rooms get when something unexpected and true has been said. "Her name is Luna." Scarlett's voice did not shake. She had not let it shake in 14 years of running meetings and defending decisions and absorbing bad news without flinching, and she did not let it shake now. Her father is a maintenance technician. He works 2 jobs. He makes sure she has everything she needs, in every way that matters. He sat on a park bench with a woman he didn't know and answered her questions honestly and asked nothing back. She looked out at the room. The press section was very still. When that story got picked up in the press, some of it was unkind about both of us, and his response was to disappear, because he didn't want to complicate things for me. She let that sit for a moment. "I want to say publicly, for the record, that he gave me something no one in this industry has ever given me. A conversation where no one was keeping score. And the person who made it possible was a 6-year-old who thought the best thing about having something was being able to share it. The applause, when it came, was not the polite kind. Michael heard about it third hand, first from his coworker, again from the property manager he worked for in the evenings, who had seen a clip online. He had not watched the clip. He had been at work when it happened, diagnosing a pressure irregularity in the building's water system on the 14th floor. He was driving home when his phone rang. An unknown number. "She did that," Luna said from the back seat when he told her. Luna had strong feelings about Scarlett, had maintained, since the park,